This week we're going to talk about your how to print your drawings, and then also how the drawing template that we'll be using affects things. Um, so to start with, open up. I've just opened up a blank template from the ACAD template, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit in the past. I'm going to go over it with you a little more. So across the bottom, we've got model and then layout one, layout two. The layout tabs are what we call paper space. And think of this as the piece of paper that your drawing is going to be printed on. Um, in, in mechanical drafting, we do all of our drawing, if you will, all our object lines, hidden lines, center lines in model space, and then we put our dimensions and text in paper space. Because in most mechanical drafting drawings that we'll be doing, you're either working at a 1-to-1 or a 1-to-2 scale. There's a little variation. There might be like a 1-to-4 or a 2-to-1, but most everything is 1-to-1 or 1-to-2. And it makes it easier to deal with your text height and dimension height if you do all of those things in paper space, because then you're just doing it full size. In architectural drafting, we'll do just about everything in model space. So we'll dimension in model space, we'll do text in model space. The only thing that would go into paper space would be general notes, like lots of a block of text. And the reason for that is because the architectural drawings are always at a much larger scale, like, a quarter inch equals 1 foot. And so there are ways to adjust the size of text and dimensions and all that kind of stuff to make it work like that. But in this class, in 1101, we'll do all dimensioning and all text in paper space unless the assignment tells you differently, because there are a couple of assignments in this class in 1103 where we will do model space dimensioning. But, all right, so the paper space, the layout here, we've got a piece of paper. The size is set in the page manager. And the dash line here is the printable area of whatever printer is specified. Okay, the white sheet that you see is whatever size paper is specified. Now, this black line right here is called a viewport. And a viewport is a window through the paper into model space. So if I select the viewport, like I just did, down here we have a couple of buttons down here. This one is the scale of the viewport. And so we change the scale of the viewport there. This locks the scale of the viewport, or locks the viewport. So the panning and the scaling won't change. And I'll demonstrate that to you. The paper versus model button. So if we press that button here, now you notice the viewport became a heavy line. And now what we have here is model space. So let me go back over here to my black screen, model space, and I'm going to put a circle in. And I'm going to put it kind of in the center of my paper. So I'm just going to say 5,5 for the center of it. And I'll give it a radius of 2.5. Okay. So there's my circle. If I go back to paper space, there's the same circle. But you see, I'm in paper space now. So any panning that I do or zooming that I do is the actual sheet of paper. If I go to model space, and there's two ways to do that. One is to click the button down here. The other is just double clicking inside the viewport. You got to be careful about the double clicking thing, because if you go to edit a dimension or edit text, it could accidentally activate model space, and then you're doing things in model space. Okay, so now when I'm in model space, if I zoom or pan, then it's model space zooming and panning. It's not the paper. So what we do is we get our drawing set up, and then we come over here and we set our scale. Most of the time, things you'll be doing would be a 1:1 or a 1:2. Don't like zoom to fit to make it look good. Do it at the correct scale. Okay, so you set your scale. You pan with your mouse button to get it centered up in the viewport, and then you lock the viewport right here. And so now, even though model space is active, if I zoom or pan, it's not the model, it's the paper. Okay, so that pretty much handles how the model in paper space works. If I draw something here, let's say I put a line here, that's in paper space. See, it's not there, so that's in paper space. If I activate my viewport and I do a line, that's in model space. Okay, now about printing. If we right click on the layout tab and then we go page setup manager and we go modify on the layout that we're on, current page. Here's where we set our printing information. So here you would name a printer, and when we create our template, we're going to use a PDF. So we do DWG to PDF is what we're going to use most of the time. So if I set that, and I'm just going to say OK, you notice my dash line is not there anymore because I didn't get finished with my settings. So let's go back in. All right, so here we have paper size, and full bleed means it would print right to the edge of the paper, and most printers will not do that. That's why the little dash line was missing. So, and the page sizes that you see on yours may be different from here. So let me cancel that. Let me go back and I'll show you, where's it at? Right here, this is the printer in the lab. Okay, and so paper size, I can print letter and legal. That's all I can print in the lab. So if I tell it letter size, and we'll leave everything else like that for right now, and we'll say OK and close that. Now you see my little dash line came back up. Well, that's based on that particular printer that I selected. So let's go back in again. What you're going to do when you create your template is you're going to leave it at the DWG to PDF. And we're going to change our paper size and we will go with an ANSI A11 by 8.5. Okay. And up here, plot style. Most of the time you'll leave things as the ACAD plot tables. In the architectural class, we use monochrome so that everything is black and white. And this goes back to old school plotters. I had actual pins in the plotter, the printer, and then you could make up settings for what those particular pins were used for based on layers and colors. So they might be different colors, they might be different line thicknesses because they were actual physical pins inside the printer. Now everything is inkjet or laser, So you can still make pen assignments and things like that. But most of the time, we're just going to go with the ACAD plot style. And we'll cover these other things when we go to set up our template. Okay, so let's close that. Now, you notice that little border changed now. And honestly, I'm not real sure why it changed. So let me go back in and look at that because that does look a little strange. Let me look back at this one. Yeah, about the same. Oh well, you'll see. Let me make a change to it and select one of the printers that I have here hooked up that we could actually walk through the process. And so, yeah, I have a choice of letter size, and my drawing, or if you can specify, your paper which way, I think we need to keep it that way, and then change our drawing orientation to landscape so that because that's how our borders are always going to be. And so let's OK that. Okay, so that made it a little bit better on the dash lines going around. So, if you were to want to print that, well, let me go to the regular. Here's the template that you're going to create later this week. And if we look at the settings that we're going to use for that, here's the settings that we're using. Okay. And I'm not going to get into how to change those things in this video. But if I were to print this, I can go to the icon up here. I can select plot. I can hit the red arrow pull down and go print. Okay, and so this looks pretty much identical to what we had before. And so here you could make changes based on if you're going to print to a specific printer, here's where you would make that change. And so by default it's set up to drawing to PDF. Let me change it to the printer that I'm going to print to. Okay, now let's do a preview because I highly recommend in AutoCAD, anytime you go to print, do a preview to make sure everything looks good. Okay, and so that's how it's going to look when it prints. And so if it's good, I hit the printer icon here. If it needs changes, I hit the red X to go back. And maybe I need to, center it or adjust the extents or whatever. Most of the time, your plot scale is always going to be a 1:1 because we're printing from a border on paper space. And so that's how we want to keep those things. Looking at my notes here, see if I got, yeah, I think I got everything covered. And then if it's good to print, you just hit OK, and it will go to the printer. So there's pretty much an introduction to paper space, model space, the print setup, and those kinds of things. The template creation assignment will have a whole series of videos in there on how to create your template, and then save that so that you're going to use that to do your drawings, your imperial drawings for the rest of the semester.